Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. I am one of the hosts, Zach, and the other host is Chris. What's up, buddy? It's been quite a
Hello.
few minutes.
It has been a little while. Zach, my dear friend, excellent to see you. Awesome to see you as always. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us around the world and the interwebs and the solar system. Thank you. Thank you so much
So-
for joining us. Yeah.
that's a new
Ah,
one, Chris. The solar system. I like
good.
it. You're expanding
Ah,
your horizons.
ending like well, Antarctica and the solar system. Like, I mean, if we were like where the show The Expanse takes place, right? Then they're around the solar system, so we would be broadcasting to the solar system, literally. Perhaps,
That,
yeah.
yeah, that's true. But my question would be if it was the expanse, wouldn't we have people that are belters that don't like people like us who are on Earth?
Oh,
Um,
indeed.
and
Yeah.
people who are on, like the people who are on Mars don't like people on. I mean, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't. I mean, maybe we would be broadcasting and people would listen, but they would hate
Uh,
our guts. I
they
don't
would.
know. Who
Yeah.
knows? But I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
we're kind of. I mean, I like to think we're fairly likable. Like, we're two easygoing guys that like to have fun, and I feel like we wouldn't be
Yeah.
that hated, would we?
Absolutely not. I mean, we like the
Oh,
Belters and we like the Martians,
yeah.
and yeah.
I got no problem with them.
Yeah. All good.
But I will say, you mentioned the expanse, and what
Hmm.
we're talking about right now, the idea of like being hated by the Belters and the Martians and everything, kind of will play off of this episode that we're going to talk about
It sure will.
with the idea of xenophobia, right?
Xenophobia.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. It absolutely will.
yeah.
Um, isn't it we we like the shows like Star Trek and The Expanse, they really touch on things like xenophobia. People can really, you know, that is a very, very human thing, right? So
Yeah.
this really like touches on it. So seeing that be be really interesting, like to talk about that like early in the Federation and what it has to deal with.
Yeah. I think we should have a somewhat of a lengthy conversation about that because I think there's a
Uh,
lot we can unpack there and unravel with this idea of um, xenophobia and where we are in today's world and whether we think that would be a thing if, aliens landed on Earth today. And we'll unpack that.
we sure will.
There's definitely a few layers of travel clothes to unpack there for sure. but,
We did
okay.
not pack light. It's gonna
No,
be
they
like
no, we didn't pack light. Yeah, it's been a while since we have met, and so I know before we jump into what we're here to talk about, which is Star Trek Enterprise's Demons, which is the third of four Section 31 centric episodes within the Enterprise series. I think it's kind of important we just catch up a little bit. I mean, a lot's
yeah,
happened in the past 3+ weeks since our last episode came out.
it sure has. A lot's happened. Look, I you know, my I've been working hard and traveling as of you, you've been working like super hard and doing a whole bunch of different activities. It is we've had some nice like summer days up here, like up north. So that's been great. And um yeah, then I'm getting ready to do some more traveling. That'll happen pretty soon. That'll take me away that I'm getting prepped for. Um Sarah got me these my daughter, she got me these like little Star Wars like
Nice.
figurines, so
Sweet.
we've got some some Chewbacca and some Luke. So that's been great.
I
And
heard you do a really good Chewie impression.
Chewie, I don't think so. Yoda more, I'm more a Yoda.
Yeah, you're more
Yeah.
of a Yoda.
More yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
My Yoda,
absolutely.
hey, my Yoda impression has gotten better because of you. I've had to up my game.
Oh.
I've had to try I'm still not on par with you, but I've had to try to work towards getting better.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, so yeah, it has been a while catching up.
Yeah.
And you've been like having all kinds of activities, my friend.
Yeah, man, it's
Ah,
been wild. Got a promotion at work, which was amazing.
it's wonderful.
So glad that finally happened. And yeah, since the last time we recorded, man, I passed my black belt test. So that was a huge milestone. And I've
Yeah.
talked about this with people who have asked about it several times about this idea of not that my martial arts journey is complete, and we've talked about that before, but I feel like I've completed the circle by achieving this milestone. Not, I haven't got the finish line. I'll never get there, but achieving this milestone of getting my black belt or my first black belt
Yeah.
was something I started back when I was 6 years old. And I have a picture of me when I was a kid, about six in 1990. Don't tell anybody how old I am. Um, of me doing a headstand in my little karate gi and my white belt. And I remember when I was taking my black belt test, I had that picture next to the computer to remind myself, like, hey, this is for that little guy who had a dream all those years ago after watching The Karate Kid and having a dream, and the next day waking up and asking my mom if I could do karate. So she signed me up, and unfortunately, I quit after about 5 or 6 years ish. I think I don't remember exactly how long it was, maybe seven. And was a long multi-decade break before I picked it back up when I was up there in Alaska, where we met. And yeah, I mean, I'm just glad to finally have gotten there. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of time, as you know,
Yeah.
better than anybody, how much time and effort we put into this to get where we are. And it's, and I remind myself too, like what Mr. Miyagi tells Daniel, where he says karate's here, but karate's never here. And he points to his waist because your
Yeah.
belt is not your karate. Your belt is simply an indication of the amount of effort and time that you've put in and some of the techniques that you've learned, but that's not what karate is, right? Right.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that was really special. And then my family and I went to a fan convention yesterday. And we're gonna go back in tomorrow, and I got to meet the one and only Martin Cove, aka Sensei John Kreese from the Karate Kid franchise. And I told him about getting the black belt all these years
Yeah.
later, and he shook my hand and congratulated me. And I said, I was one of those 80s, 90s kids who fell in love with the Karate Kid franchise and got into martial arts because of it. So it was surreal 34 years later after first watching The Karate Kid and watching him in that movie to meet him a matter of weeks after getting my black belt.
Mhm.
And so when we were in line waiting to meet him, I told my kids, I said, if he asks you any questions or whatever, what's your response going to be? And they said, our response is going to be yes, sensei. And they did that too. So he asked my daughter a question about something and she goes, yes, sensei. And he smiled, he smirked. So that was great.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Zach, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Not only, you know, I'm proud of you for both things, like the for achieving your black belt, for achieving the promotion at work is so awesome and indicative of like this journey that you've been on. And your story of like, yeah, like you were always interested in karate, like as a kid. Karate Kid inspired you.
Hmm.
There was a gap of time where you weren't able to be in it, but you kept that like in your mind and you kept continuing. And then when the opportunity came, then you got back like into the dojo, got back into studying martial arts, got back into studying karate, and have continued and then culminated into this, into achieving it. It is amazing. And so I think that's just so wonderful to be able to do, to be able to set that up like as an example for, for your children and for others. Because it is an example of like, hey, if you wanted to do this, like as part of your life, it never goes away and just keep continuing. And when the opportunities present themselves, get yourself back into that opportunity and continue until you're able to achieve it. So it's just this wonderful example of, holding on to that and not letting it go and grasping and seizing that opportunity when you can. And so I'm just so proud of you. I know like you've worked so hard, not only at work, to get your promotion there and to do what you've been doing, but then at karate too. And so I'm really, really proud of you, my friend. It's just
I
wonderful.
appreciate that, man. Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
you're part of that journey too,
Yeah.
right? When I got back into martial arts and
Mm.
we met in Alaska, I mean, you spent a lot of time helping me in class and teaching, and then our times over Zoom, you were
Oh,
helping me study and prep for tests. So thank you for being a part of that and helping me achieve my goal.
yeah.
I told my kids several times because my son wants to be a baseball player, my daughter
Yeah.
wants to be an actress. I told both of them, I said, I hope that one of the things you can learn from your dad is not to give up on your goals or your dreams, right?
Hmm.
Like, even if you don't achieve them at first, don't give up, right? Like keep fighting, keep working hard towards them. And so I hope that they learned some level of resiliency, some level of determination, and some level of fight, and to never quit for what you want. And know that if you put in the work and the time and the energy, that they you can achieve your goal. So I hope that when they're
Absolutely.
older, that they saw that and they saw what their dad went back and did, and they use that to as motivation to achieve their goals.
They will.
I
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. They absolutely will remember this.
Yeah,
Hmm.
hopefully.
Yeah.
Somebody else that I really wanted to meet, who was at the fan convention, was Timothy Zahn, who is an
Yeah.
amazing author. And I told him when I met him, I said, in my opinion, you are the greatest author in the Star Wars franchise. I mean, of all these expanded universe books, he's the best. He wrote arguably the greatest Star Wars trilogy in the books that there is, which is the Heir to the Empire trilogy. But yeah, it was so awesome. I mean, he was really nice, really gracious. And so what I did was is I bought the 20th anniversary of Heir to the Empire,
That
this
is
hard copy.
beautiful.
Yes, for
Oh,
those of you listening, this is a hard copy. It's absolutely gorgeous. I have a reading copy of this, so I'm probably not going to read it. But he also signed um, inside of the book. Well, geez, there goes my mic again, as always. Every episode I got to hit at least once. There he sent this inside the book, and he dates it when he signs it. So it's dated July 4th,
yeah.
2025. So it's cool that it's dated on the 4th of July, our America's birthday.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So let's hold yours up at the same time. I'll hold this one up. This is Heir to the Empire. So this is the yeah,
That's the
this is a different
classic
one.
cover, I
Yeah, it's
believe.
the
That's
classic
that's the
cover.
that's the original classic cover, right? I think the
Yeah.
original artwork. Yeah.
Yeah, and look at that. Oh, like that beautiful jacket on yours. And you said there is a novella that can only be read, is only available in that classic edition, right? Or that anniversary edition.
Correct. Yeah. So in the back, there is something back here. It's called Crisis of Faith.
Yeah.
It says an original Star Wars novella, Timothy Zahn. You can't get this in the audiobook. You can only get this if you buy the 20th anniversary Heir to the Empire version. So for those of you watching or listening, if you're a Star Wars fan and you love this trilogy and you want to read this thing, you got to buy this version of Heir to the Empire book, which is what I was told in line by the guy who was, helping move people along.
Oh, outstanding.
So I'm excited to have that. I've wanted to meet him for a long time, so it's pretty cool to meet some of these people at some of these different conventions and be able to get a chance to talk with them and interact with them. And also got to meet four of the guys that were part of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie back in 1990, I believe it was. That was incredible, including the guy who played Shredder, who was the Shredder for the second Turtles movie.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. I told them all, I said, thank you so much for being such a big part of my childhood because the Turtles were everything to me as a kid. So that was also neat.
This Fan X sounds like a kind of a great expo to go to, I
It
think.
is
Yeah.
because they have a bunch of the Supermans, all the main characters from the Flash have been
Hmm.
there this weekend. We're gonna meet David Ramsey tomorrow, who played John Diggle in Arrow. We met Emily Bett Rickards, who played Felicity Smoke yesterday, and
Nice.
she asked for a podcast card, by the way. So
That's wonderful.
maybe that'll be an opportunity down the road to have her on with us and talk with her, which would be amazing.
Yeah.
Um, the guy that so Robbie Riff, who did the voice of Michelangelo in the first Turtle movie, I think in the second one too, but in the first one for sure. I gave him a podcast card, and he had expressed an interest in coming on. So we'll see. We've got a queue of people that we're working through to have as guests on with us. So be sure to stay tuned right here on our YouTube channel or your favorite podcast platform if you're listening for a future announcements on upcoming guests, because that'll be awesome.
Oh, that's cool. Now was it in
Yeah.
downtown Denver?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. We're gonna go back tomorrow, I guess, and meet some other people. And the the Weasley brothers, the guy who played the guys, the
Oh
twin brothers who played
yeah.
the Weasleys in Harry Potter, or we're gonna meet them tomorrow. And Jason Isaacs, who plays Malfoy's father, is there. Who also was voices in Star Wars animated Clone Wars. He was in Star Trek, as
Mm.
Lorca. Been in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He was also
Yeah.
a younger version of him was also in Event Horizon, one of our favorite sci-fi
Mm.
movies.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So, anyways,
we know like Event Horizon is a cult, like people like really like it, like it's a cult classic. People
it's
really like
more
it.
horror than it is sci-fi,
Yeah, for
for
sure.
sure.
For
But
sure.
the concepts behind it, the sci-fi concepts behind it, are very intriguing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, Chris, we are continuing our spotlight series as we are looking at the third of four Enterprise episodes that deal with Section 31. Now, the last one the last one and this one aren't super Section 31 heavy,
Yeah.
but they're still important as we continue to look at the meddlings that Section 31 does within the scope of the 22nd century.
Yeah. And in this particular episode, you can tell that and you can understand that Section 31 kind of has an understanding of the backdrop of activities that are going on Earth, right? I think what is the name of that organization? Terra Prime. Terra
Terra
Prime, right?
Prime. Yep.
They've got kind of understanding of Terra Prime's objective and everything, all of the events that they're trying to control. So
Isn't it
yeah.
interesting too, though, Chris, that Section 31 isn't exactly going out of their way to stop Terra Prime from doing bad things? It's almost like because Section 31, even in the 22nd century, seems to have enough ability to either initiate or stop things from happening. So why wouldn't Section 31 step up and stop Terra Prime from doing bad things? And I think the reason is because they are allowing Terra Prime to do things that maybe they would do, but they don't have to do it because there's somebody else or another organization that's willing to do it on their, not on their behalf, but
Mhm.
willing to do it and they don't have to.
Ah, that
It's
is
almost like
interesting.
it's almost like Terra Prime's doing the dirty work for them. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I do. I didn't even think of it
Assuming,
that way. Yeah.
yeah, assuming Section 31's objective is the same thing as what Terra Prime's is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. We open the episode with the Enterprise crew back on Earth. I think there is a speech given by I'm not sure if his title is Prime Minister, but it is a speech by one of the politicians there, Nathan Samuels,
Yeah.
um, talking about the Federation and um, but during this speech and during the festivities, there comes in a woman, right? And I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this correctly. And she comes in and you can tell she's hurt. And I believe she goes to Paul and says he's still out there or close to that, or he's out there. And so that kind of sets the stage for what's going to go on in the episode. And T'Pol has no idea what she's talking about,
Right.
right?
And it's isn't it interesting, Chris? So Enterprise uh Enterprise doesn't have a massive amount of multi-part episodes. I mean, you can look at season 3 of Enterprise as a continual story arc with the Xindi and the Xindi War, but not necessarily it's not necessarily considered, multi-parter. It's just a continual story arc, right?
Hmm.
So Enterprise doesn't have a massive amount of multi-part episodes, but the two of the last three episodes are multi-part. I find it fascinating that they do a multi-part episode just prior to the finale because you get Demons, which we're going to talk about now. Then we get Terra Prime, which is part two of this two-parter, which we'll talk about in the next episode. And then we're going to get the finale, and it's over. That's
Yeah.
it. It would have been very interesting to had Enterprise gotten, another season or two. It would have been really fascinating to see like a continual like mini story arc that maybe covers 5 or 6 episodes with all of what we're going to talk about here, with the idea of, the Vulcan human hybrid, Terra Prime, uh, what's the word I'm looking for?
Xenophobia.
Xenophobia, yeah,
Yeah.
xenophobia, like this idea of a young Earth society in relation to aliens living among them, visiting, like kind of watching humanity progress through this early period of space exploration and integration of alien life on Earth to compare to what we see later on in the other series.
hmm Yeah. It would have been really interesting. And they could have taken that idea for several other episodes and a couple other seasons at the very least.
Yeah,
Right. And so therefore, like this multi-parter, it feels like they had these very ambitious ideas and really good ideas, and they had to compress it into um, two episodes that were connected.
yeah,
Um, and and it did feel like to me, like now I would have to watch season four all over again, but it to confirm, but it did feel like to me like Terra Prime as an organization. I think this is the first time we hear about it, right? So it just pops up and bam,
yeah,
this is Terra Prime, and they're
correct,
I mean, they're pretty organized.
right.
There's a lot of people involved in there. Um, so it kind of jumps out here, and you can definitely understand why it exists and trace back, the origin to Terra Prime, and with the Zindi attack, you can definitely understand oh, okay, yeah, there's going to be a group of a population on Earth and a population of humans that are going to object to aliens being on Earth for sure. So you can definitely trace it back. But I did feel like it's a little abrupt, maybe,
Mhm.
and it wouldn't feel as abrupt if this wasn't like these two episodes and then the finale, right?
Right.
If it was able to continue on, then it wouldn't feel as abrupt.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they were getting canceled and they had to rush up and hurry up and finish the series. So
Yeah,
you're right. I think it's very abrupt, but I think had they gotten another season or maybe multiple more seasons, I think they could have intermixed this story arc amongst episodes and maybe not even being a multi-parter, but just be something that every once in a while we continue to check in,
yeah,
right? We continue to see how Terra Prime continues to play a role in the development of society moving forward on Earth.
yeah, you sure can. Um, what what I also really liked about this particular episode is, um, I mean, yes, there's Terra Prime that was introduced, but Travis Mayweather, he's pretty significant in this episode.
Yeah.
More so than I remember in other episodes. I mean, he's present at that speech ceremony by the prime minister,
Yeah.
and
Nathan
then
Samuels. Yeah.
yeah, with Nathan Samuels, and then you see that there's a reporter there, and then he has a connection with that reporter. There's a history there because they start
Yeah.
talking, and Gannett, I think is her name, if I'm getting that right,
Yep.
but they explore that throughout the entirety. Um, of this episode, which I thought was great. I mean, I really thought it was great to explore this with Mayweather and Gannett. And then, skipping forward a little bit, um, but you know, she's kind of a spy for Terra Prime. So everything is interwoven in that. And I thought that was just a great, you know, a great technique to do for the story.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that.
Yeah.
I really like this episode because we get to see more society on Earth. I'm
hmm
fascinated because okay, it's cool to have a new planet of the week. As the Enterprise continues to go deeper into space and explore. But the idea of them coming home, the idea of them being there for this speech given by Nathan Samuels, where he's talking about the formation of a coalition of planets, which we, of
Yeah.
course, know becomes the United Federation of Planets. And this idea of, well, there was a line in there, well, if every planet has a voice, how do you know who to listen to or who to follow? And they talk about the idea of like a democratic type process where everybody votes and has that say through the vote. and it's just interesting. I've always been fascinated by how society, because before Enterprise, how society would have been, how the formation of things would have gone early on as the United Federation of Planets formed. We know Starfleet came first because Starfleet's here, they're flying around. And then just this bringing together of so many worlds because, for example, like the Tellarites and the Vulcans don't really, or no, the Tellarites and the Andorians don't really care for each other, but yet they're two of the founding members of the Federation. So
Mhm.
how does that, oh, how do you overcome that? How do Starfleet officers, how do Starfleet captains play a role in the negotiating, in the representation and being, basically human ambassadors to other worlds to get them to come in as part of this coalition of planets.
Mhm.
So I really like these types of episodes where we get to see this early society on Earth post, Vulcan's landing, post warp technology, and as technology is continuing to grow and we see that everything on Earth isn't hunky-dory yet. It's not the paradise we know in TNG and DS9 and Voyager and the future. It is still a massive work in progress.
And it's messy. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. That would have been like really interesting to see like how was everyone able to coalesce and come to the same goal, and come together to agree on the charter for the Federation.
And from a storytelling perspective, from a character development perspective, I love Messi. Because
Yeah.
what Messi does is Messi either grows characters or makes them worse, right? But again, from a storytelling and a character development, I love Messi. I love to watch characters work through things. I love to see who's going to come out better in the end, who's going to grow, mature, all these types of things. As I've gotten older in my years, even though they say we're getting younger,
We
I
are
don't know.
getting younger.
Okay. Well, as I get younger, one of the things that I like to see is stuff like that. And so I like to watch the struggle because through the struggle is forged new characters or new better versions of previous characters that we thought maybe we liked and now we don't, or maybe we hated and now we like. It's great storytelling, and this helps that, I think, these two-part episode, or this two-part episode.
Yeah, absolutely does. Absolutely does. So we find out she's a nurse. I believe the lady that comes up to Paul gives her a vial of
Yeah,
something,
and
right?
she dies, right? I
I
believe.
believe so. I think
Yeah.
besides they take her to the Enterprise. They try
Mhm.
to um they try to help her. Phlox tries to help her, but she does die. But along the way, there is something that they discover that is pretty pivotal, in that she's got DNA, I believe.
Hmm.
DNA and
Yeah, it's a strand of
and
hair, isn't it? I
yeah,
believe in a
yeah.
vial. Yeah.
And it's of a child. And then Phlox lets them know that the child is a combination of a Vulcan and a human. And without question, it is the offspring of Commander Tucker and T'Pol.
Isn't that wild to have a bombshell like this right before the finale, series finale? Like, hey, by the way, oh, series is over. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, the amount they have to work through, and I do think it's worth mentioning. So this episode came out on May 6th, 2005. It was written by Manny Kodo, who we all know, rest in peace, Manny, became the showrunner for season four, which is, again, we've mentioned this several times before, that season four of Enterprise is widely regarded as the best season. I think you can make arguments against it, but I would argue for sure that the season four is the best season in the
Mhm.
series, even though there's a lot of amazing episodes early on as well. But also, this episode was directed by none other than LeVar Burton. So we get another
Oh,
TNG
yes.
director. Jonathan
Yeah.
Frakes, I believe, has directed Enterprise already at this point.
Hmm.
LeVar Burton is now directed. I think it's in, and then of course the finale, which we won't talk about probably for a while, but of Enterprise. But
Hmm.
the influence of TNG into Enterprise is very, very significant.
Yeah, absolutely is. That's great. I'm glad you said that because I had not remembered. I must have forgotten that LeVar Burton directed this, but That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. I would argue that outside of Next Generation, right? And the other series. So take DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, and then any of the new Trek.
Hmm.
I would argue some of the best episodes of Trek are directed by TNG actors.
Hmm.
I
They
mean,
are.
especially Jonathan Frakes. We know Jonathan Frakes
Yeah.
is an incredible director. He's an amazing actor, but he might be an even better director. That's how good he is.
Hmm.
And also, Robbie Duncan McNeil, who played Tom Paris on Voyager, has become a prolific director in Hollywood as well,
Hmm.
along with Roxanne Dawson. But I would say that a majority of the amazing episodes that we see in the other Trek series, a lot of them tend to be directed by other Star Trek actors, specifically
Hmm.
TNG, and
Hmm.
this is one of them.
Yeah, it's fantastic. They understand it, right? They understand the
Yeah.
point and what the actors have to go through to give the best performances and give the best scenes.
And TNG did an incredible job at storytelling, right? And so they learn that art of storytelling and bring that to the other series, in this case, Enterprise.
Hmm.
So this is
Hmm.
this episode and then Terra Prime, the next one, are two great examples of good storytelling in Star Trek.
Yeah, they are. Definitely for sure. So, I mean, this episode, there's history between T'Pol and Trip, of course, right? There's
Oh
there's all
yeah.
this romantic history, but this part where, you know, unquestionably this DNA comes from the offspring of the child. It's just a catalyst for these great other scenes between T'Pol and Trip. I mean, Trip has this whole kind of uh almost like an internal existential crisis and thinking, well, did T'Pol like actually have the baby and not tell me? And
Mm.
and then he has all of this doubt. He shares that doubt with Phlox. And Phlox is like, how could you even ask that Trip? Of course, she didn't do that. He he expresses, his concern to T'Pol, and T'Pol's like, no, no way I would have done that. Like, me, I wouldn't lie. So I love that that's explored in this issue because I mean Trip was really hurt. So he's kind of going through all of this and he's dealing with how he was hurt, but he still obviously cares for T'Pol and he would care for the baby too. Um,
Hmm.
and T'Pol's really struggling with like how does she even go about like dealing with this, right? She just um goes and meditates and knows and expresses to Trip that I know it's our child and I know our child is out there. And Trip is like, how do you know that? And she says, well, I'm Vulcan. I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the history runs deep between T'Pol and Trip. So if you're Trip, right, and this thing happens, I think I don't know how you'd react, Chris. If I were him, I'd probably react in a similar way. Like, did you have a baby and not tell me? But at the same time, I would think to myself, I've been around her enough, even though I know he's been on the Columbia, right, for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
He would have been around her enough to have noticed a difference. I mean, even Vulcan females would show that they're pregnant, right? It's not like Vulcan females get pregnant and then they deliver a baby in 2 weeks. There's nothing like that. As far as I know, I don't think there's much lore behind, the gestation period of Vulcan babies, but
Right.
I'm sure it's something kind of similar to humans. That being said, I think he would have noticed. Other people in the crew would have known and probably would have told him if she wasn't going to.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a yin and a yang. It's a double-edged sword. It's this idea of, well, how, you know, did you get pregnant and just not tell me? But then I would have probably known or found out by now that you had a child, and it would be a very confusing time for Trip. I mean, obviously for T'Pol
Mm-hmm.
too, right?
Yeah.
But especially for Trip because T'Pol, if she was pregnant, she'd have known. He wouldn't have necessarily known right away. So I think it's a very confusing and quite if you're watching Enterprise brand new as it's airing and this happens and they drop this bombshell into this episode, you'd be just sitting there going, "What?
Yeah.
What?" Like they had a baby and we never saw like there was no episodes of this. So how did this happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a good. definitely like a compelling like problem for them that they're navigating through. So
Yeah.
I do like this as part of the episode. Yeah.
And it certainly brings in a significant amount of drama,
Hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
if you think about it, the hybrid baby that is Tucker's and T'Pol's is really the driving force behind this episode and the
Yeah.
next episode, right? That the baby is the central piece to what drives these episodes and the fact that it's within the control of Terra Prime.
Yeah, it is. Um, it's I liked that as far as bringing Section 31 into play into the picture.
Yeah.
It's really Captain Archer that is the start of it. Everyone's like, we have no idea how this happened. We have no idea what's going on. What in the world is happening? We know there's this thing called Terra Prime out there. There's all this problem. And Archer goes, he goes to Reed and he goes, the friend you were working with before, I think we need to contact him and let's see what's going on.
Yep.
So um that is like it's a really like a 180 for Archer, like to do that, right? Because he was so disappointed in Reed, um, that Reed couldn't tell him about Section 31. Um, and then under this circumstance, Archer goes, okay, I guess we need Section 31. Go see what you can find out.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Chris, I guess Archer got over it, didn't he? Because he's going to Reed. He's like, hey, you know that Harris guy? I need you to contact him.
Yeah.
Um, to me, this is a character trait of Archer, right? This idea that we know Archer does have principles. We know that Archer has morals, but we also saw during the Zindi War that Archer's willing to do whatever it takes. He is willing to bend some of those in order to accomplish the mission that he thinks is for the greater good or a greater cause. In this case, I think he's willing to basically renege on on his feelings towards Reed. I think Reed proved himself, right, in his
Hmm.
feelings, or in his, not his feelings, his loyalty to Archer and the crew. And he's not, doing things to cause harm or this, that, and the other. And so, because he knows where Reed's loyalties lie, I think he's more willing to explore this Section 31. And because it involves two of his senior crew and a baby they didn't even know about, he's willing to bring Section 31 back into the fold in order to get the answers that are needed.
Yeah, for sure. I really liked when Reed went down to Earth and he set up that meeting with Harris.
Yeah.
It looked like they were meeting at night, if my memory recalls, and
Yes.
they
Like on
were
a
like,
rooftop or something, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, some secluded area. It felt like very like Cloak and Dagger. Reed going into this like definitely like they had this spot that they had decided that they wanted to go to, and Harris was there, and I think one of the first things Harris says when Reed is there, he's like, "Okay, if we start talking, this means you're back in the game." And so, right, you're back in the game. And so
Yeah.
I liked that was the uh actually one of the like it's like a really little line, but one of my favorite lines of the episode. You know, just Harris saying, "You're back in the game now, Malcolm."
Yeah. And what I also like about it, Chris, is that they leave it open ended, where it's like, okay, he says Malcolm's back in the game, but Malcolm doesn't necessarily put up a fight about being back in the game either. He's just doing what Archer's asked him to do, which is to go get information, right?
Yeah.
Contact your contact in the Section 31, Harris, and get information because this is really, really important.
Yeah, it is. And
So I like it, like you said. Sorry,
yeah,
the idea of Section 31 being very cloak and dagger, and this idea of secrecy and everything. So the fact they kind of make it that way for this idea of Reed getting back in the game, even though the last Section 31 episode we talked about, where Reed literally hangs up on Harris because he says, "Yeah, I'm out, I'm done," and he hangs up on him. And now all of a sudden he doesn't really put up a fight to be back in the game. It's like I think Reed missed being a part of the action a little bit.
I agree with you. That is very much like Reed's personality.
Yeah.
That's what he likes, right? I mean, he's a cloak and dagger military man. He likes that. And when Harris says, if once we start talking further, like we're back in the game, I like the way Reed does it because Reed doesn't, if I recall correctly, Reed doesn't actually acknowledge that Harris says that like verbally, right? Reed he hears it and then he just starts inquiring about the baby. Right. So I like, oh, I like that a lot. So it's just kind of this unstated, very unstated thing like, yep, Reed is back in the game now. Absolutely.
Yeah. And if I could describe Reed using only the names of TOS episodes, it would be a piece of the action.
Oh yeah.
I think if I my wife described me, she'd say I would be the trouble with tribbles or the children shall lead.
The children shall lead.
Just the name of the episode, not the actual plot. Which is actually funny you mentioned that. So one of the guys I met at the fan convention yesterday, his name is Brian Tochi, who was in the suit as Leonardo in the
Mm.
first Turtles movie. He also, as a young kid, was in the episode "The Children Shall Lead," and in fact, he was telling me when I met him, he said that he's one of only three of the surviving children that are left. The rest of them have all passed away.
Oh my.
So
That was a lot of history there.
a lot of history. And by the way, all the guys who were in the Turtles movie are all freaking incredible people. Like they're all, and it's funny because when I leaned over to Brian, and I said, "Hey," I said, "don't tell Ken who was Raphael or the other guy." I said, "But Leonardo was always my favorite." So what does he do? He reaches down underneath his table and he pulls out a blowhorn and turns it on and starts talking through the blowhorn and making the and then he starts talking and it was just so funny because every time a fan would come up to one of the turtles and
Yeah.
say that their turtle was their favorite, they'd make each one of the actors make this huge like, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" Like Ken, who was hilarious, who played in the suit in Raphael's suit, would be like, "Yeah, Brian, did you hear that? Yeah, Leonardo sucks. He's not the favorite turtle. Raph is." I mean, it was friggin' hysterical. They were absolutely awesome guys. But
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, anyway, sorry that was a rabbit trail, but yeah, I mean, I think Malcolm missed being in the game a little bit when it came to
Yeah.
Section 31, and I think that was evident by his lack of response to Harris saying you're back in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about like another thing that I loved about this episode. RoboCop is
Yes,
in the
Peter
episode.
Weller.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
He's also that admiral in Star Trek Into Darkness, right? With the Vengeance, or was it the?
Oh,
Yeah. He's in Star
okay.
Trek Into Darkness too, as that crazed admiral who thinks that he's got to go to war with the Klingons before the Klingons do, and
Okay.
he's got that big ship, and yeah, they attack the Enterprise. Anyways, yes, RoboCop himself is in this episode, and I thought he was fantastic as this bad guy.
He sure is. You have to love Peter Weller being in here. I mean, uh he was the perfect lead for Terra Prime.
Yeah.
And just he had a very um authoritative, like and commanding kind of presence being there. And then I just love that how evil he felt, you know.
Well, hang on a second, Chris. Was he evil or did he have a point? Because you have to think about it, right? So the Xindi War, where Earth is attacked and it kills a bunch of people, like thousands and thousands, or what, however many million. I don't know how many.
Mhm.
I don't remember how many people's killed. We know Trip's sister is one of them, and it puts this massive damage into the Earth. I'm not excusing the xenophobia. I'm not excusing the actions of some of these characters, but doesn't it kind of make sense that something like Terra Prime would spawn out of an event like the Xindi attack on Earth? I mean, and don't you think that he kind of has somewhat of a point of this idea of, maybe they should be a little bit more. Again, I'm not encouraging xenophobia. What I'm saying is maybe be a little bit more guarded and not just be willy-nilly with any alien who wants to come visit. Does that make sense? Like, again, I'm not saying this guy is right or any of that. I'm just thinking, is he really a bad guy, or are his actions just wrong?
This is a great discussion because you're absolutely right. He brings up what's this character's name? Is it Paxton? RoboCop's character, Peter Weller's character is like I think his
Yes,
name is
Paxton.
Paxton.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he brings up another person from history, I believe, and in one of his conversations with his minions or his lieutenants, he says,
Correct.
"Hey, I was watching this video of so and so, and they, I guess he would the video he's watching, the person he was watching, is generally regarded as a as someone that made a really bad decision in history or wasn't looked favorably on in history. But then he starts saying, but he had to decide against this how to end the suffering. Either you have to make a decision where it caused some amount of suffering now, um, or you don't make the decision and it causes a greater amount of suffering later. Um, if I'm kind of recalling the gist of what he was talking about. But
Yeah. So
yeah,
sorry, Chris.
yeah.
He mentioned a guy named Colonel Philip
Ah,
Green,
yeah.
who made barely. He was watching a video of that, and the video was made barely 3 years after a ceasefire that ended World War III.
Yeah,
So that's what you're getting at, and this idea
yeah,
of the decision making and the decisions that Colonel Green made. He looked at Colonel Green as this like amazing person versus people who looked at him in a not so favorable manner. And I think that's where we get this idea of historical figures, right?
yeah,
Where history judges people in the past, right? And the history judges because we as humans judge people on past decisions, but sometimes we judge people on past decisions. We don't necessarily have all the facts either, right?
yeah,
Like, I mean, we can make very coherent judgments on certain people, and there's really no argument. Hitler, Stalin, these types of people that it's like, yeah, you can't argue they're evil monsters. But there are people in history where you say, well, these people looked at this guy as a bad guy, but these people looked at him as a hero and a savior and blah, 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 blah. And I think maybe Colonel Philip Green may fall into that category, vice falling into the Stalin and Hitler and people there's no argument. They're terrible, awful people. And there's really nothing you can say that's going to change that opinion.
I agree. Like in the Expanse, I'm gonna switch glasses here. In the
Go for it,
Expanse,
man.
in the Expanse, there was a similar like character, like they called him the Butcher of something something station. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and but that's that same idea, right? That here's this person. He was in at that moment. He had to make a decision. A whole lot of people died, and then he's regarded like very negatively, like in history. And then what you're talking about reminds me of like an episode of in TOS. Um, oh, it's that one where it's the traveling Shakespeare group, and it is someone that Kirk remembers, uh, and he's thinking, "Hey, this guy caused like the death of all of these people," um, and you learn later on the episode it was like, "Hey, I had to make this decision, and all these people died, but I was trying to prevent this future suffering."
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I like
there's
that.
two other Star Trek episodes that remind me of this as well when we're talking
Yeah,
about this idea of Colonel Green, right? And being maybe either misunderstood but he has or maybe it's just he is a bad guy, but he has a following of people that don't see it that way. One of them is Duet, which we know Nana Visitor really loves. Remember, it's
yes,
where he's looked at as this evil guy, and in reality, he was just a bookkeeper, but he was the
yeah,
bookkeeper who allowed the atrocities to happen and didn't speak up or say anything or stop them. And therefore, he felt so guilty because he felt like he was just as much a part of the problem during the occupation as the actual Cardassians doing the bad things to the Bajorans.
hmm,
The other one is a Strange New Worlds episode called Under the Cloak of War, where you have the Butcher of Jagal, right? And that Klingon who ends up killing all his own people,
Hmm.
and that interplay, if you remember, between Dr. Mbenga and him. And so I think of those couple of episodes as we're talking about the idea of Colonel Green, because they're in this episode, Paxton and the other guys that he's talking with are discussing the moral implications of Green's genocidal policies.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so someone who commits genocide, there's really no good way of looking at it.
Hmm.
However, it seems like Paxton believes that maybe this guy's actually a hero and not a genocidal villain like he's been portrayed in history. So
Yeah.
I know we kind of went off a little bit on a tangent there, but I thought it was kind of important to address this concept and this idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of context right here, right?
Yeah,
Because
a
because
lot.
because because Paxton and these other groups, and the members of Terra Prime, I mean, they're coming off of what? They're maybe they're 2 or 3 years off of the Zindi attack. I mean, it's really just raw, like
Yeah,
right
it's still
when
super raw.
you know
Yeah,
when the Zindi attack happened. So they haven't processed it,
right,
right? It's not like they're detached from the situation. They were all obviously like really, really affected. And
right.
so it's just becoming, they were so affected. Now they're just thinking about, hey, how can we survive?
Yeah.
And it's kind of, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I was thinking so there's a three-part episode that was the first of its kind during the premiere of season 2 of DS9. It involves the circle and all that stuff, and it's this idea of the Bajorans becoming a little xenophobic. And this circle was a radical group that believed in Bajor for Bajorans.
Mm,
They also came off of something really raw, which was the Bajoran occupation, or the Cardassian occupation, excuse me, on Bajor. The Cardassian occupation of Bajor. Wow, can't get that out. It's a mouthful. So we see this type of thing happen in many different ways across the Star Trek universe.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
So we see,
this is really cool.
yeah, and we see that Colonel Green is has a significant influence and is a bit of the driving force behind why Terra Prime is doing what they're doing, I think.
Hmm.
Um, Not necessarily that he was xenophobic, because this would have been World War III, which means would have been pre Vulcan's landing and
Hmm.
knowing that they were alone or not alone in the universe. But the looking at Colonel Green as maybe a bit of a hero or somebody who's misunderstood in history uh, gives inspiration to Paxton and his followers to do what it is they believe needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad they brought in, it wasn't big, but I'm glad they brought in that idea of Colonel Greaves, or
Yeah,
excuse me, Colonel Green,
Colonel Green.
like
Yeah.
as an idea right there that like he was idolized or thought of from Paxton. I thought that was good.
Now, I know you're a big Total Recall fan. I like Total Recall as well.
Oh yeah.
Ronnie Cox was incredible as the overarching bad guy on Mars, right? And this idea of someone who's controlling the air, which was literally like water. They had to have it, right? They were in this recycled air and everything inside the habitat domes and so forth. Nothing against Ronnie Cox. He's a fantastic actor. He was also great as Captain Jellicoe in TNG. But don't you think Peter Weller could have also played that role and been fantastic in that role that Ronnie Cox played? Again,
Absolutely.
not that I think Ronnie Cox wasn't the right guy for the role, because he was, but I think Peter Weller would have been an equally good villain in Total Recall.
Absolutely. Peter Weller is great.
Yeah.
He's great here. He's great as RoboCop. He's great as Buckaroo Banzai.
He plays a great villain, I will say.
Yeah.
He plays a lot of great things, but villain is certainly up at the top of the list as one of those things he plays.
Hmm.
Um, it's very interesting, right? So we cut to Mayweather and Brooks on the Enterprise, and they're touring. He gives her a tour to launch bay. They go into the shuttle pod, which is the one that goes into the sphere in the Delphic expanse during the Xindi War. And then, of course, they make their way back to his quarters, and adult things happen. And but you can tell there's a history here, right? And this is dangerous because, as you mentioned earlier, that we learned she's a spy for Terra Prime, and this friend he kind of gives access to someone who's, well, she's a spy for Terra Prime, but I think she legitimately is a reporter as her
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
right? So giving this friend, this reporter, access to places, a little bit of a misstep here by Mayweather.
Yeah. I, I felt so bad for him. I mean,
Yeah,
he,
he
he
got
he
played real bad.
he did. I mean, there's history there, like at the beginning of the show when they met at that conference and that speech, and he's very standoffish, and she's just trying to uh, at least you felt like, hey, she's just trying to get to know him again, saying, hey, I'm like, I feel really bad about the situation, and you, you get a little bit of insight into Mayweather, when you see him open up and he feels bad about some of the decisions he made, he felt like maybe bad about how things ended with her before. So he got played.
Yeah,
I felt like, oh, that's just really, really unfortunate. Hard for him. He was so blinded and completely blindsided by it, right? So
yeah,
that was too bad. Really too bad.
yeah. And when I was watching this episode, Chris, I'm curious on your thoughts about this. So, okay, we know T'Pol and Trip go to the moon, and they're posing as people who are there as miners, right? They're
Hmm.
mining ore on the moon. Trip was the chief engineer on the first Warp 5 vessel. Don't you think somebody would have recognized him? Even on the moon mining there, that somebody would have, recognized who he was as part of that crew. That crew would have been big time news on Earth, right? I mean, I find it a little bit hard to believe that T'Pol and him are just able to maneuver their way around. Nobody knows who they are. She's a Vulcan, and all this stuff with Terra Prime's going on, and no one really seems to give a rip that she's a Vulcan, and why is a Vulcan there? I mean, to me, that part really kind of got me on the believability piece. I had a hard time believing the two of them would be so easily able to get in there and pose as minors without somebody raising a fuss.
Yeah, I agree. Because don't they get uh when Trip is there and he meets a couple of the other miners, and because they're looking for people that are Terra Prime people,
Yeah,
and Trip meets one of them and they says, "Hey, you should come and like listen to what I'm going to talk about. I think you're really going to like it."
yeah,
Uh, At that meeting, doesn't the guy goes, and here's Trip, like
yeah.
from the
He
Enterprise,
calls him
like
by
points him out.
name.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Trip's
So
just like,
somebody
yeah,
notices him, but
somebody notices him. I think that's a misstep by Trip because Trip had to like go like, hey, you're absolutely right. They would have been like big news. Like, yeah, that's the first. The Enterprise is like huge news. Their first Warp 5 starship and the foray out, past the solar system.
yeah, and they're going deeper than anybody else has gone, especially faster.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little unbelievable there. I know, and like you mentioned, he does point out Trip, but to just move around like that and not be like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
they'd be so out of place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So that part didn't really make sense to me. Um, but the speech that's given, as you mentioned there, was also interesting. And when Paxton is able to get a hold of Trip and T'Pol, and this is where you kind of learn about Paxton and what he stands for and who he is, and that really drives the next episode, Terra Prime, the part
Hmm.
two of this, where he says, that his ultimate goal is to return Earth to its rightful owners,
Hmm.
and that it's his life work, it is what he's born to do, and there's no one, not an alien, not a human, that will stop him from achieving it.
Hmm.
That to me sounds very anarchist, very authoritarian type mindset. And obviously, I think he even mentioned something about his father. So this is a learned behavior from his father,
Hmm.
and he's used whatever amount of money that he's made from his company and all this other stuff that because I think, didn't he say his father gave the moon to him, the moon
I
base
think
to
so.
him, like.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
So
so.
it's a generational thing, and that's giving him the ability to use the moon as a launching point for this Terra Prime organization that he's founded.
Yeah. And now it's become more of a um it's a crusade. Like when you
Mm.
say, yeah, now it's his ultimate goal to return Earth. So he's so focused on it now, it has consumed him, and that is his crusade, and he's lost like whoever he whoever he was before that. Now it's this person that, hey, it's humans and only humans, and if you're not human, then you have to leave, and that's his all-consuming purpose in life now. And so there's there's nothing outside of that.
Yeah. It's very fascinating to see what has become of this, because obviously his if his father left him the base, it doesn't. I don't think he ever really specifically mentions his father having the same feelings, although you would assume that there would be some of that. But obviously, the Zindi attack had to have been kind of the breaking point,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? That really is what kind of launched this idea in his mind that this needs to be Earth needs to be for humans only and no aliens, and
Yeah.
this idea of xenophobia. And I know we talked about this idea of unpacking the xenophobia. I've always been fascinated by what, and this would be the future for us, in the
Hmm.
past for some of the Star Trek shows, or actually all of them, what Earth would have been like and what the growing pains would have been for Earth and society getting to the point where Earth becomes like a paradise, where there is no more murder, no more, hunger, poverty, disease, famine, all this kind of stuff. And we begin to see some of this through these episodes, which is why I like them so much, because we see the struggle humanity continues to go through, even post World War III, even post Vulcans and technology and things changing. And we see that because there are people like this, like Paxton, who are holding on to ideas that seem, I guess, by future Star Trek terms, like barbaric
Hmm.
and very archaic. And so to watch humanity continue to struggle to get to where we know they're eventually going to get to kind of makes me think of now as we as humanity continue to struggle through so many things that and I'm sure as you're the same way I am, hoping that one day we are able to get to a better place, right? I don't think we're ever going to get to the way Star Trek's future is, but it sure isn't something nice to shoot for, something nice to aim for.
Yeah. Uh, it's
Or
great
yeah,
that Star Trek is exploring this in Enterprise, and it's explored it in different iterations in the other series like as well. Because humanity is so tribal in like its nature and like how it is intrinsically. Like if it's not uh like human, then or if it's not, part of our tribe, then it becomes something we have to think about, or how do
yeah,
we deal with this? This is not something that is like us, or it is something that comes from outside. And then therefore, what do you do? Like how do you treat it?
yeah. And we saw that too when we talked about past tense part one and two on D
Hmm.
Space Nine. Literally, I mean, that was set in the future from when the episodes were written. And we just happened to talk about, well, we didn't just happen to, we chose to talk about it literally in the exact time period in which we were going through.
Yeah.
2024, I think it was, what wasn't this year we talked about it? Was it last year?
2000, I think so. 2024. Yep.
Yeah, August of 2024 when we talked about it.
Hmm.
And we were literally going through that. And so we continue to see that humanity had a massive struggle. Now, that, of course, the past tense part one and two went to a time period in Earth's history, Earth's future, uh, pre World War III. So this is before, humanity nearly killed itself. And now we're at a time period of time in the Star Trek timeline where we're looking in the past, future for us personally, but in the past from the other shows where they've gone past that. They got warp drive, they've moved on, they're supposedly getting better, but yet we still see humanity struggling with something like xenophobia,
Hmm.
with something this like this idea of, I don't want to use this term necessarily because it does sound a little bit maybe too grim, but this idea of cleansing Earth from
Mm-hmm.
alien life.
Hmm.
Um, so we know humanity is going to struggle for a while
Hmm.
as it works its way towards the future we see in TOS and TNG and DS9, all that stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I find this very, very fascinating. I'm very fascinated by what would be, you know, 22nd century, um, which would be the future for us. So it'd be,
Yeah.
100 years. I mean, we're looking at this, right? Like 130 years ish in the future from where we're at now.
Hmm. Not that far.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it is fascinating. It is fascinating.
It's also fascinating that at the end of the episode, right? They have this enormous moon base that launches up off the surface.
Looked like it was gonna
And
fall apart. Like,
yeah, right?
yeah.
We're like, okay, so now the moon base flies. Okay, cool. And it's also interesting because I believe that at some point Paxton tells Tucker and to Paul that the Orpheus is also warp capable. And you're
Yep.
like, wait a second. It's a moon base and then it flies and it's warp capable? Like, oh, this is not good.
And it can go to war
In theory.
in
Because
theory.
I think Tucker also says that they'll be lucky if it doesn't the facility doesn't tear itself apart, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And they end up going to Mars and like
Yeah.
landing in Mars and um it's definitely not the Enterprise. It's not like
No.
as nice ship as the Enterprise. It just felt I did feel like, oh, it's just gonna tear itself apart, fly
Yeah,
apart.
but even going from the moon to Mars at warp one, which is the speed of light, you're gonna get there in minutes. It's not like it's gonna take you 6, 8 months like it would now. They're gonna get there
Yeah.
real quick.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
Enterprise quick, but pretty quick.
Yeah. And they do. And they
Yeah.
land on Mars and I think they take control of the Verteron array,
Yeah.
right? So that which is supposed to be able to, shoot down like comets and different other uh celestial objects that might pose harm to Earth. But they're taking it over so that they can shoot any ship they would like to shoot in the solar system.
And they test it by firing at the moon, back at the moon, right? Which is
Yes.
a long ways. And what what Paxton says at right at the end of the episode before it says to be continued is really telling, right? Where he says he sends out that subspace radio transmission, uh, and basically telling everybody who's not human to leave the solar system. He says at this moment, mankind casts off the shackles of alien interference and now determines its own fate, its own destiny, Terra Prime forever. It's like, dude, you the Vulcans landing on Earth pulled Earth out of the decimation post World War III. You sure you want to do that? Like, I guess he thinks, oh, we don't need them. I mean, he's obviously,
Mhm.
a generation plus removed from the Vulcans landing. This is like 80 years in the future, right? So he wasn't there when that happened. His father might have been, but he wasn't.
Right.
So yeah, it's very interesting to see the way this plays out and the fact that now you have a human who has, in essence, taken a moon base, flown it to Mars, landed, fired a laser back at the moon, and said, "Yeah, everybody get the frick out if you're not human."
Yeah.
And we're the ones that are going to determine our own destiny, not aliens. So get out. Oh yeah, by the way, Terra Prime forever. Like, wow, that's pretty ballsy, man. But all
Yeah.
right, I guess I guess with that Verteron array, I guess he just feels like he can fend off starships and anything he needs to.
I was thinking about that and I was like, how effective is it really that effective? Because can't the Columbia just come in or the Enterprise just come in and like
Yeah,
so so the Verteron array shoots something and then well, I think you just be able to get out of the way of
yeah.
whatever like particle beaming would be there and the Columbia will just shoot some like phasers at that moon base thing.
I would think so, but I guess part of it too would be maybe they he feels like he's got the hand up because he does have T'Pol and Tucker as hostages. He has the baby as a
Hmm.
hostage, so he's got some. I guess he probably feels like he has some level of leverage against an attack where you know does Earth really want to order Starfleet to destroy and kill its own kind? And everybody knows about it, and then that causes. I mean, there's probably
Hmm.
something in his mind going. They're not going to shoot and blow us up or kill us because that would be them murdering their own kind, and that would cause all sorts of chaos and anarchy. So they're not going to want to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a he probably does have a significant amount of you know what's the word I'm looking for? He has a significant amount
Le
of
leverage.
leverage,
Yeah.
yeah, a
Yeah.
leverage in the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Then we end with the to be continue to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Like Archer's not sure what he's going to do. You know, this episode is called Demons, and I was thinking about the title of the episode, still thinking about it, and I'm trying to understand hmm, kind of the origin of the title. Nothing's coming to my mind like at the moment, so I'm still going to be thinking about it for a while. But yeah, if something comes to my mind, I'll be talking about it our next episode too, what the title means to me.
The title to me, at least off the top of my head here, thinking about this as we've been talking through this episode, the
Yeah.
title to me, Demons, makes me think, okay, as humanity, we still have these demons inside of us. This idea of and our what we're capable of. We're still capable of xenophobia.
Hmm.
We're still capable of terrorism. We're still capable of kidnapping and extortion and all of these things. So to me, the title represents what is still inside humanity at this given juncture of time on the timeline, and the demons that we wrestle with day to day. That's how I look at it. It may not be the right way, but that's just kind of what came to mind as we were talking about this.
I think that's a fantastic like interpretation, actually. Yeah, I think that was great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Um, I like I've said before, and I remember going back the very first time I watched Enterprise, and I knew I was getting to the end of it, and I'm like, oh, I didn't want it to end because it's so good. And I remember watching this two-part episode, going, wow, like this is really good because this is showing the struggle that humanity still has. Things aren't perfect. You still have people who are struggling with feelings and thoughts that you would have thought humanity kind of would have outgrown at this point.
Hmm.
But yet you still have people that don't play by the same rules. And it's not paradise. Earth is much better off at this point in time, but it's not paradise. We even see that in the was it the last episode we talked about where Phlox is no, it was Divergence, I believe, right? Where we talked where Phlox is kidnapped on Earth by
Yeah.
a group of people. That doesn't seem to, it's not that it doesn't ever happen anymore, but it doesn't seem to be a common thing. The crime and the kidnappings and the murders, that doesn't seem to be a thing that happens frequently up until this. point. And then we start seeing a rash of these things happen, and that's where we start seeing Section 31 becoming a player in these
Hmm.
episodes
Hmm.
as these things are happening. We know that Section 31 is not involved initially, and then we find out, oh, wait a second, Section 31 was had a deal with the Klingon High Command in order to have the augment virus and this, that, and the other in it.
Hmm.
And then you're like, okay, so wait a second. So now Section 31 is doing bad things to its own people for some cause. And now we see Section 31 knows what's going on right now with Terra Prime, but
Hmm.
doesn't seem to want to step in and have anything to actually do with it unless they're sitting back going, well, if Terra Prime gets rid of the aliens, we might be out of a job, or it's going to be make things easier on us. We won't have to do this some of the shady stuff we've had to do because of alien attacks. I don't know. It's just something, a kind of a theory I thought of.
And at this moment in time, Section 31 is very much it is a Starfleet sub-organization, direct for Starfleet. Federation is not formed yet. Federation does not exist. That is it is very much a all Starfleet thing, right?
Yeah,
And this is to advance and protect like Starfleet and Earth.
right.
Um, yeah, so I think that is a very kind of seems natural that that's their kind of outlook at this moment, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and we know that Section 31 is officially unofficial.
Hmm.
That we know that well, we learn in DS9 that by the time the 2300s come around, late 2300s come around, that the highest levels of Starfleet and the highest levels of the Federation know about and or go along with what Section 31 does. It's almost one of those things where it's like they may not necessarily agree with Section 31 and the way in which that they do the things that they do, but they're not exactly stepping in and stopping them because they're doing the dirty work that they know they can't do
Hmm.
in the light.
Yeah.
Section 31 operates in the shadows. They're in the light, so therefore they can't move into the shadows, or else they're going to risk compromising their own careers and this, that, and the other. And I think we see that here, but in a different way, right? Where Section 31, at least as of this episode, doesn't appear to be getting involved. They know what's going on, they know of the baby and Terra Prime, but they don't seem to have a real desire to step in and stop them as of this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna see what's next. I don't recall if they are in the next episode. I have to look back and see if Section 31 is mentioned in the next one. I don't know if you remember either. You did.
They play a role, I believe, because the
Okay.
next episode is on the list of Section 31
There we
episodes.
go.
So I don't remember specifically how the level at which they're involved in the episode. I mean, I would say of all the Section 31 episodes we've discussed so far in the Spotlight series, this is the least involved we've seen Section 31 is from a standpoint of being in the episode itself, right?
Yeah.
Um, but that's okay because the fact that Section 31 knows about what's going on tells you the level at which Section 31 is intertwined with amongst society on Earth.
Yeah.
That's significant to me, especially at this particular juncture on the timeline.
Hmm.
So
Cool.
very, very interesting. And we know that Section 31 is part of Article 14 of the Starfleet Charter.
Yeah.
So Section 31 has been around a minute.
Yeah.
And we know they continue on forward in the timeline. They don't go away. Um, but I found this episode very interesting, Chris, because this is one of those moments where it's like okay, Section 31, you talk about being like security for, well, in this case right now, Starfleet, right? And humanity, where the frick are you at?
Mm.
Like,
Hmm.
how come you have more than enough capability to stop this guy and his cronies? why aren't you? Guess we'll find out.
We will.
Yeah.
We will.
But this was fun, dude. This is the second to last Enterprise episode involving Section 31, and it's the second to last Enterprise episode,
Yeah.
period. So it's really fascinating how we've watched Section 31 move in and around uh, the legacy Star Trek series so far.
Yeah, it has. And a different flavor of Section 31 in the different series. I mean, the flavor of Section 31 in DS9 was, you got the feeling of a much more established,
Yeah.
much more like advanced with high technology, kind of stealthy organization there. So it's kind of neat to see it further back, like in the past. Like how did they behave? How did they operate?
I was going to ask you this question at the end of our Spotlight series period on Section
Mm,
31, but I'm going to ask you now while it's on my mind. If you were a member of Starfleet and or well, depending on where you're in the timeline, right? If you're a member of Starfleet or you're a Federation member who serves in Starfleet, and Section 31 approached you because what they're doing is so vitally important to saving the quadrant or saving
mhm,
this or that or the other. Do you think that you possibly, Chris Hodgen here, as you are today, but this is
mhm,
the future, do you think that you could be either a part of or help work with Section 31 in any capacity?
mhm. My initial reaction would be yes.
Even though you know they do things that you might not necessarily agree with, or the means in which they do things, you
Mm,
do still think you could either be a part of it or work with them on certain things, like
yeah,
like what Reed's had to do.
yeah. That's how I feel. Is like my initial reaction is like, oh yes, yes. Isn't that interesting? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was not the answer I expected,
Mm,
actually. I was
yeah.
thinking you'd be like, no, no, like I'm gonna do it X, Y, and Z way, and I can't deal with Section 31. So that's interesting.
Mhm.
It's not the answer I was expecting from you.
Yeah. And you, what do you think?
If I was a lot like, okay, let me do it this way.
Yeah.
If I compared myself to a captain, right, and I was
Mhm,
comparing myself to Picard, I would say there's no chance. There's no chance that I could involve myself with Section 31. If I was more like Cisco or Archer,
mhm,
then I absolutely could,
mhm,
right? Because we know Cisco and Archer did things because they felt like, and the means to which they accomplished their objectives were not consistent and not in line with Federation and Starfleet values.
right.
However,
Mm,
because Section 31 exists, does that mean that Starfleet's values and it's known, by the way, all the way up the ranks? Does that mean that Starfleet and the Federation values aren't exactly as ironclad as people think they are
mhm,
because of the fact that they allow Section 31 to do the things that they do? Because I would think if the Federation and Starfleet was more like Picard across the board, I don't even think Section 31 would exist. They would have shut that crap down
mhm,
and wouldn't have allowed it to continue to operate. If it's more like Cisco or Archer, then I would say that's why Section 31 continues to operate. Does that, I
yeah.
mean, that makes sense?
Yeah, it
Like,
makes sense. Yeah.
I would probably say, like, just me, not compare myself to a captain. I probably also would
Yeah.
work with Section 31, but I wouldn't do just anything.
Yeah.
It would be very specific thing. So,
So it'd be very, yes, it would be dependent on what the task is, what the mission is.
right. That being said, the way it's portrayed, it doesn't sound like you can just dip your toes in and out of Section 31. Either
Yeah.
you're in or you're out,
You're
right?
in or
We've
out.
seen that
Yeah.
with Reed, and we saw a little bit of that with Bashir.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, well, this was awesome. I know we haven't had a chance to have too many discussions and episode reviews and podcast recordings lately because we've both been so freaking busy.
Yeah.
But this was great to jump back into this and talk Enterprise, talk Section 31, and look at the way in which things are being shaped and formed, even though I know it was rushed because of production reasons and show being canceled, the way it was formed and everything leading up to the founding of the Federation and the signing of the charter.
Yeah, this was awesome to do. And it's going to be interesting to watch this next Enterprise episode with Section 31, the second part of this two-parter. And it's going to be interesting, really interesting, I think, because we are going to delve into Discovery for the first time
Mm.
ever with the Section
Other than
31
the pilot
episodes.
episode, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and that's going to be something.
That will be something, all
That'll
right.
be something. Yeah.
That will be. So I want to ask you this too, Chris, because the Section 31 episodes we've had have been DS9 and Enterprise only so far.
Yeah.
Now that we're getting towards the end here of Enterprise, do you feel like any expectations that you might have for this Section 31 movie that will be the culmination of our Spotlight series on Section 31? Has any of your expectations changed at all? Or any thoughts about this movie and what you hope to see or expect to see in it changed because of the way in which Enterprise has presented Section 31?
Yeah, I really felt like right now my feeling is a Section 31 movie should feel like there's cloak and dagger involved, there's spycraft involved, there's this sense of um impossible mission force involved, like Mission Impossible, but the sense of yeah, you're an organization that exists, but it's not, really we don't really like recognize you like as part of government, but we know you're there, um and that you have a leader. So I feel like there's, yeah, as a movie, these elements from Mission Impossible, these elements from like Cloak and Dagger, um, a little bit of James Bond with MI6.
Yes,
Yeah, I
I was
think
just
you're
gonna
about the
say. I
same
was
thing
just gonna say
too.
James Bond. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I'm kind of thinking. And you have these, focus on these agents. Like Sloan definitely, was an agent, right? And he had, um, we didn't see many other agents other than Sloan, and then we've got Harris. But that's what I, for a movie, I could see us like focused on these agents that, how does them being in Section 31 like affect their lives, how they're intertwined with everything.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with you on that for
Yeah.
sure. Um, I really hope that we see a lot of that cloak and dagger. I want to see the inner workings of Section 31,
Yeah.
not just an agent appearing or having a video call or anything like that. I want to see the inner workings. I want to see the connections. How is Section 31 dispersing their agents to different areas, and how is all that working together? When they have all these different operations and things going on, are those all working together in some way, or are they isolated things? I mean, I would assume by doing these things, each of these things in some way contributes some objective to an overarching idea. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that should be in it as well.
Yeah. Agree. See, we've
So
got we've got these fantastic ideas for a Section 31 movie.
we do, man. I just think well, I shouldn't say I think. I just hope that doing all of this, we're not building a straw man. We're not building a house made of straw that's just going to get blown over by the big bad wolf so easily. That we're going to watch the movie and go, oh, what was that?
What
Like,
was
that was
that? Yeah.
nothing like, I mean, I'm hoping that's not the case. I hope we watch it, we go, okay, yeah, maybe it wasn't that great, but it definitely got after some of the things that we hope to see or we're expecting to experience in the movie, given everything we know about Section 31 up to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
That's really, for me, I don't even necessarily care if it's that great of a movie. I want to see some of our expectations and some of the things we're hoping for be in the movie itself, right?
Hmm.
Like that, knowing that they went back and did kind of what we're doing. They went back and watched Section 31 stuff and they use that as their guiding point rather than just, oh, let's make a movie that's got Michael Bay explosions and it's just for entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
Mm-hmm.
I'm really concerned will happen, and hopefully it doesn't.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the that DS9 episode, the last one with Sloane in it, where it went into Sloane's mind, I
Mm,
thought was a very valuable episode because you could see that Sloane as a Section 31 agent, as a Section 31 leader, you know, he understood that he was divided as a human being, as a person, right? He had to compartmentalize some aspects of himself
yeah.
because, he had to do things that, weren't like what you do for as a family man. Right? These were like some like nasty things I'm sure he had to do. So that's that'd be cool to like see in terms of a movie or as a series, like because these are Starfleet officers, and so um
Yeah. That's a really good
yeah,
point that you bring that up with Sloane because on one hand, like you mentioned, I think you're absolutely right. He's divided, right? He's compartmentalizing the two lives. He's two completely different lives.
yeah.
I would also add on to that the one compartment with his family, maybe that's shown because that's the
Mm,
driving force behind why he does what he does.
hmm. Yeah.
Right. So he has to compartmentalize him, but he knows over here the civilian Sloan, right? The Sloan that is not the Section 31 agent is doing what he does to protect this
Hmm.
and to protect that way of life.
Yeah.
So I think it could maybe be a little of both.
Yeah, I
But
think.
I definitely think you're absolutely right on that.
Yeah. What I like about Sloan too is he really likes Bashir, right? He says Starfleet needs people like you, like
Yeah.
idealists, people that are really good people. So that's what I like.
And I wonder if he says that to Bashir because maybe
Yeah.
there's a part of
Yeah.
him that wishes that he was more like that
Yeah.
and not the Section 31, like almost like
Oh, great
that
point.
internal struggle, right? That
Yeah.
that that pull of wanting to do the right thing, but knowing sometimes he can't do the right thing because by not doing the right thing, he's actually protecting the ones he loves and the way of life. And he knows that there are people that have to work in the shadows to do the things that they have to do in order for people like Bashir to be able to be the way they are. It
Yep.
allows them to be that eternal optimist and that person like that because of the people that live in the shadows like he does.
Yep.
And I think we're seeing that even in Enterprise too. We're seeing
Yep.
that with Harris and Reed and, all those things.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Awesome, man. All right. Well, for those of you watching or listening all over the globe and the interwebs, we hope you've enjoyed our latest Section 31 Spotlight Series episode as we've looked at Star Trek Enterprise's Demons. We highly encourage you, if you have thoughts on what the title meant to you, leave us a message, send us a note, send us an email. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I'm sure, Chris, you would as well.
Yeah, I would like to hear that.
Be really great. Really enjoyed this. I love, love, love early Earth history in relation to Star Trek and this idea of developing society as they continue to move forward post Vulcan landing and warp technology. I love to watch the struggle as they build up towards the founding of the Federation and beginning to build a future paradise on a planet that we know in real life is still ridden with war and crime and poverty and all the things that they quote unquote fix in the future. We're still going through and still dealing with today. So
Absolutely.
it's I don't know about you, Chris, but I sit here and just go, man. I just wish we could all get along, and I just wish we could get past all of these terrible demons that we
Yeah.
still deal with as a human species and you know get to more of like what Star Trek's future looks like because it really would be so much better than what it is now.
Yeah. I hope we're able to get there. And then have some like it's going to take a long time. It'll take a lot of struggle, but have like
Yeah.
mutual understanding and respect like
Yeah.
for one another to keep moving forward.
And I don't think we're ever going to get there, but I hope that we do. And I
Mm.
hope that we are able to because what an incredible future world we would be building for our future
Mm.
generations, not just the
Yeah.
ancestors. We be the ancestors, our future generations of family that we don't even know, we will never even meet because they'll be so far in the future.
Yeah.
So Anyways, all right. Well, thank you again, everybody, so much as always. Be sure to go on to Facebook, Instagram, Threads, YouTube, if you're unless you're watching us there already, your favorite podcast platforms, and much more. You can find us on Gmail. You can email us, the Random Redshirt Podcast at gmail.com. And we hope you've enjoyed this latest look in our Spotlight series, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode in our Spotlight series of Section 31 entitled Terra Prime, which is the part two of this in Star Trek Enterprise. And yeah, again, so also be sure to stay tuned for future announcements of upcoming guests as we continue to work to schedule those around our schedules, as crazy as those can be. It's wild. And sometimes, Chris, it's hard to be able to get together at the same time and record. But when we do, man, it's
It's wonderful.
refreshing. It's nice to
Yeah.
just escape for a little while and talk about the things we like to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely it
Oh,
is.
really
Yeah.
quickly before I forget, I saw another new like uh 30-second trailer on TV for the Alien Earth series.
I did see that. Like
I have
uh
hopes. I have high hope, not high
yeah.
hopes. I have hopes that the series could be good.
The trailers look excellent, I have
Yeah.
to say, right? And like Ridley Scott is I think he's involved as a
Yeah,
producer
you
level
mentioned
somewhere.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if people aren't familiar with the Alien franchise or the Alien series, I think this trailer will really, really interest them. It had the idea of artificial beings or yeah, this idea of transferring consciousness into artificial bodies at least.
Yeah.
And then, aliens coming to Earth and did look like there's going to be significant amount like of compelling action. And then I do really like that idea of artificial beings because that always makes it interesting. So it looked really modern and really good so far.
Yeah, and it looks like it's not just the xenomorphs, that there might be some other alien species that maybe
Oh,
have been brought
yeah,
back on the ship that crashes onto Earth. So, a
yeah.
lot of intrigue for me. I know we're both big fans of the Alien franchise, and I'm really curious to see how they take this and what direction they go. I'm hoping for good storytelling, not just a bunch of action and aliens killing humans,
Hmm.
because that's kind of
Yeah,
been done a few times before.
yeah,
But like you had mentioned to me when you told me that you Ridley Scott was involved, I'm like, okay, if he's involved, then that gives me some additional hopes that maybe this will be pretty good.
yeah.
So
I
yeah,
agree. So I'm looking forward to watching that with you and talking about it with you. And then hopefully we get some more background intel, some information about the alien origins. Like what's up with all of them?
yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if the alien origins thing would be something like the whole Yoda species thing, like if it would be better to continue to remain a mystery
Hmm.
as they continue to build on the franchise, or if it's something that they should really reveal and give us more. Like, okay, this is where they came from, all this, and then that would then connect a lot of the dots across the franchise to the
Hmm.
different versions that they've created over the years.
Yeah.
Either way, it
Yeah.
looks really good. And
It
it popped in
does.
my head because I was like, oh yeah, I just saw that, like, I think it was today or yesterday. I'm like, man, this could be really good. So maybe that's something we'll have to talk about on the podcast. We can talk about the Alien franchise and talk about how Alien Earth fits into it. And that could be fun.
It will be fun.
Yeah,
Indeed, my friend.
for sure. Okay. Thank you again, everybody. As always, take care and we'll catch you next time right here on the Random Redshirt podcast.